Getting an LLC for your business doesn't have to look like this. Just Google LLC.
This is probably one of the most important presentations that I've given. A national discussion on reducing gentrification. Today we want to talk about one of those tools to reduce gentrification in communities throughout the United States. If you live in a poor community and you know that you could face possible displacement, if you're a community development corporation and you do community development and economic development, or if it is somebody that sees the current crisis that's going on in the United States with the displacement of residents of poor neighborhoods throughout the United States. This is a must participate presentation. So tonight we're going to talk about something that's known as the CRA and the changes that are coming to change the Community Reinvestment Act. This particular CRA, who controls it? Well, there are three agencies that oversee the CRA, and I'm going to tell you why it's important. It's the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Federal Reserve Board, and the Controller of the Currency. Yeah, I know, Controller of the Currency. These entities control the CRA, which control the banks. Basically what happens is that banks, by way of the CRA, and I think the CRA came into play in 1997 or sometime during that time, in which there was an attempt to look at distressed neighborhoods and using the banks to make more of a commitment to provide access to banking and capital to minority communities and distressed communities throughout the nation. This has led, and you're going to hear someone else talk about this, to gentrification. And it continues to add to the gentrification that's going on in communities throughout the United States. Let's talk about why that's the case. Well, the way banks are instructed to provide access to minority communities in terms of capital, home ownership, and etc., currently is based on income. So if that banker says to the regulators that we have met our quota in terms of assisting minority communities, that means that once they meet that quota, they don't have to provide capital to minorities. And a lot of times this means that a lot of blacks can be denied capital because the banks are not focusing on race. The problem is that when you only look at income as a gauge to whether minorities are getting access to capital and are moving up, it's a false narrative, because when you look only at income, the majority of the minorities are white females. So when banks say they're meeting their quotas by providing to minorities, in a large part, the way the current system is that they basing it on income. Now, what is being proposed by a lot of people who are in the know is that we look at whether or not banks are providing the necessary service to minorities by looking at race as a factor and not just income. That means banks won't be required by law to make an aggressive attempt to increase minority specific to race, like African American community, like Hispanics. It is imperative that we participate by August the 8th, and I'm gonna put the site up here that you can go to and let the regulators know that with the changes coming up, what you want to see in terms of those changes. And August the 8th in order to give your input. This is so important. And I'm asking you to share this with everybody that's in poor communities. Because Black folks, if we sleep on this, the conditions of gentrification will continue. I'm going to play a piece from a person that gives it like it's never been given before.
Higher income workers moving into urban centers, and some have raised concerns that maybe CRA is encouraging this in some way. So do you share that concern? Marla already brought it up, so I think that's probably on the table. And what do you think the NPR has right or could do better around that? Anybody can answer that.
Yeah, that always has been an issue. So it's not new, in the context of this particular rulemaking. And that is because banks previously have gotten CRA credit for developments that ended up not just gentrifying neighborhoods, but displacing residents that already lived in those communities, and in particular, displacing low-income residents. Now imagine that, right? You get CRA credit for displacing low-income people from an area, and that seemed to be antithetical to the purposes of CRA. So I confess I haven't looked in detail at this proposed rule, so I really don't know if there are measures embedded in this proposed rule that will mitigate against that dynamic, right? There needs to be, and if not, we definitely will be commenting on that. But it's a very, very important question because, look, we're in Washington, D.C., right? We are in this is the epitome of gentrification and displacement. Not to put too fine a point on it, but at one time this city was known as Chocolate City. It no longer is because of gentrification and displacement, and I guarantee you that the lenders who invested in all of these developments that we're seeing around DC, in and around DC, that resulted in massive displacement of low and moderate income people, those lenders got CRA credit for that, right? Because those areas where they were investing were at one time low income. They no longer are. So this is a huge issue that we have to make sure we're mitigating against in this new proposal. I think you've heard all three of us say that we had high hopes and expectations that this proposal would be very equity focused. And anything that we can do to strengthen that equity provision, those equity provisions, I think we all are going to do. Yes.
The deadline for giving your comments, and I hope that you take some notes down, is August 5th, 2022. As you can see, there are several ways that you can voice your concerns, either by way of email. You can go to the website, you can fax them, or you can mail them. Whatever you do, please share this, because these changes, and if they're done correctly, could actually begin the beginning of the reduction of gentrification. Thank you. Now, you can go directly to the site in order to give your thoughts on this. This is the page that you're going to come to. As you can see, they're going to ask you to put in your first name, middle, last name. They're going to be asking you a question about address, city, and state, including your zip code. Now, the most important thing is here. In your comments, they're going to be asking, what do you think? And one of the most important things you want to say is that you want to type in something like you want the banks to focus on race and not just income. And in essence, to make more money or capital, access to capital available to Black businesses and Black owners. You also can see, you can also say to open up more to Hispanics businesses and Hispanic homeowners. But minorities should be defined by race. That's the thing that we're trying to come across as to what's important. Now, if you live in a poor community, I can't emphasize, listen. Changes could change your life, but we have to participate. Because right now, they're re-looking at the whole CRA. Hasn't been looked at in like a decade or 2 decades. And to see whether or not any changes can be made to make it better. You have the August the 8th to give your input. If we can get enough concerned people, no matter what the color is, to emphasize the importance of race, then we can begin to see the hurt, the pain go down. Because when you increase economic opportunities, you reduce crime, you reduce dependency on the government, and you increase empowerment. Black economic development can only survive if we're given an opportunity to develop. Again, I can't overemphasize this. If you live in a poor community, if you're concerned about poor people, if you're a politician, if you are a person that runs a CDC, a nonprofit, get the word out. Because if by August the 8th we don't, things will stay the same. So please,